This video is brought to you by Knowledge at the Australian School of Business. For more information, please visit knowledge.asb.unsw.edu.au.
The Cooper Review has just been published. The year-long review into Australia's superannuation system suggests measures to make super more transparent and easy to understand. There's also a universal no-frills super fund called MySuper. It comes just as the 18th annual colloquium of superannuation researchers is being held here at the University of New South Wales. Well, from the university and from the Australian School of Business, I'm joined by Associate Professor Hazel Bateman and Professor John Piggott. So, John, starting off with the Cooper Review, did we even need it at all?
Oh, I think we most definitely did. Australian superannuation constitutes a very unusual design, and we rely very heavily on self-funded or privately funded superannuation to provide retirement income, much more heavily than most OECD countries. And furthermore, it's mandated. So we are required, or employers are required, to make payments into superannuation funds. That's experimental. That's only really been tried in a comprehensive fashion in a very few countries. Because it's experimental, I think early reliance on certain kinds of market mechanisms to make that system efficient, that was a legitimate assumption when it started, but it's turned out to not work as well as we had hoped. So I think, yes, I think we did need the Cooper report.
Okay, when you say it didn't work out as well as we'd hoped, what have been the particular issues that obviously Cooper was focusing on?
Well, I think there is an issue of comprehension and there is an issue of engagement. So many people who find themselves in this situation of having contributions made on their behalf, nevertheless don't understand it, often aren't even properly aware of it, and are then taken by surprise later in life when the accumulations are there and they may have made or had decisions made for them which are not in their best interest.
And turning to Hazel now, I understand that over the past decade or so there's also been an issue with fees, and people have been quite surprised by the fees that they've been charged for their super fund.
Yes, the main story with fees is the diversity of fees, and that's really a reflection of the diversity of the industry. We have for-profit funds, not-for-profit funds, self-managed funds. We have funds of many different sizes. We have funds which are based on defined benefits and defined contributions. And an aspect of this, or an implication of this, is that there's been a huge diversity in fees. Fees may range from 40, 50 basis points to 300 basis points. Now, in the context of the Cooper Review, a lot of people are not engaged with their superannuation. A lot of people take the default option, and because of the diversity in fees, you've found default options have been quite different between superannuation funds, so people have been faced with quite different levels of fees. And an important aspect of that, of course, is that fees matter. Even 1% of fees over a lifetime of superannuation can reduce your final benefit by, say, 20%.
And Cooper has obviously been looking at this, and the Cooper Review has suggested this default option, if you like. They're calling it MySuper, and they're saying that it'll be a no-frills option. What's your take on that?
The overall idea of MySuper, it's a good idea. It's a good idea for those who find superannuation too complicated, something they don't really want to think about at early stages of their life. What MySuper will do is give people a no-frills, low-cost option for their retirement saving that they don't have to think about until they reach retirement.
But the Cooper Review is actually suggesting that MySuper could reduce fees throughout the entire industry. John, would you concur with Cooper on this point?
Well, I think MySuper does provide the potential for some competition and for some comparison. It's not actually clear to me much comparison will be actively taken by those fund members who would find the default option an attractive option. The default option is going to be mostly there for people who don't want to find out, don't want to know, are just hoping that all this will work out in the end. I should say too that MySuper, Hazel said, well, it's all the way through to retirement, but Cooper's idea of MySuper is that it's a whole-of-life product, and they actually explicitly say that trustees should take account of investment risk and inflation risk and longevity risk through the retirement phase as well. And that raises a whole further question of annuities markets. So it's a very big basket of issues that Cooper is examining.
And in fact, we only have to look at the report, which goes on for a good 500 pages or so, trying to work its way through all of these particular issues. And it's really seems to be making super just easier to understand and engage with the people who are putting money towards it. Will it achieve those aims?
Well, I don't know that it will achieve engagement, but maybe what it's done is to provide the recommendations which would set up something for those who are not engaged, which is not as costly as we currently observe. I think that would be a worthwhile achievement. There are those who say it's overly prescriptive, and I think there's something to be said for that, but you're not actually required to take the default option. Other options can exist and you can actively engage with those. So you're not required to become disengaged. I think it's there for those who don't want to become engaged.
And yet the industry seems to be arguing that MySuper seems to be a terrible thing. They're arguing that it may actually disengage people. Is this almost them perhaps trying to serve their own interests?
I think one of the problems is that this is something people have been, in some sense, forced into. And they would not have been there had it not been for the mandate. So engaging them as well is a whole further trick. So I don't think it's much a matter of disengagement as a matter of coping with people who are already disengaged.
So Hazel, how do we actually get people just a little bit more engaged, showing some interest in their super fund?
This is very difficult. This is something that policymakers have been talking about ever since we introduced compulsory superannuation in the early 1990s. In my view, Cooper has to come along with some additional policy design around educating people, assisting people to understand their superannuation. So I would like to see financial education, workplace training on retirement saving, those sorts of things to assist people to understand their superannuation and perhaps assist them to understand whether MySuper is appropriate for their circumstances or whether they should actually choose another option which gives them more choice in their retirement saving.
Well, that's one part of the Cooper Review. It's looking at engaging people. We've also got the other part of the Cooper Review, which is looking at the default fund, MySuper. But a third part looks at the whole back office operation, something that many people just don't seem to be aware of in terms of their super fund, but it seems to be many back offices just shuffle checks around. It's like going back to the 1970s. The Cooper Review is suggesting something called the super stream. Hazel, do you think this is going to work to try and improve the back office operation?
Superstream is an excellent idea. The idea of Superstream is to get everybody up to a much higher benchmark in using electronic funds transfer, tracking superannuation accounts with tax file numbers, etc., improving the efficiency of the industry, and there's no question that Superstream is a great idea.
And the Cooper Review as well seems to be looking at self-managed funds. There's been a lot of noise about this, but surely, John, very few people have them. Why has so much attention been focused on it?
Few people have them, but it's the fastest growing segment of the industry, and so it's important. I don't think Cooper does a great deal about it. It says these people have a lot of engagement, if you like. They're the ones that are fully informed or well informed and know what they're doing or think they know what they're doing. And Cooper doesn't want to do too much with that. So he leaves the self-managed super funds relatively untouched. Appropriately so. I think Cooper is concerned with the mandated group, right, who are in there and who find this very unfamiliar.
Okay, well, they're the people who are aware of what may be happening, and they're aware of the risks that they may live for an extra 20 or 30 years longer than they expect to. And that for them is very much the good news, but the bad news for many other people is that they just aren't prepared at all for retirement. The first time they really will probably be looking at their super fund is when they actually get round to that stage of being a year or so away and suddenly trying to work out how they're going to pay for living well for maybe many, many more years than they expect to. Now, there's a colloquium that's going to be held on campus here at the Australian School of Business looking at just this issue. It's the 18th annual colloquium of superannuation researchers. Hazel, obviously this is going to be one of the issues that's going to be discussed there. What's going to be talked about and what are the other issues?
Okay, well, the main theme of the colloquium this year is retirement saving choices. And what we're concerned about is the choices that individuals have to make, not just at retirement, but over their entire life cycle. So in Australia, we have a mandatory system, so you don't have choice as to whether to have superannuation or not. But once you start work and once you start contributing, you have a lot of choices you need to make. And once you're in retirement, all these choices about investment allocation arise again. So the colloquium this year is looking at choices over the life cycle. And we sent out a call for papers and invited contributions on all aspects of choice. So we have papers looking at choice of investment strategy, choice of fund, choice of benefit, etc. The whole area of choice in retirement saving.
Associate Professor Hazel Bateman and Professor John Piggott, thank you very much.
For more business news and analysis from Knowledge at the Australian School of Business, please visit knowledge.asb.unsw.edu.au.